how it's going to be targeted and less of how it's going to look. Then you have the sharing data and social tools, which is all the way up there in the top right corner. And you see Facebook, Share This, ClearSpring, and Gigya. How many of you guys know what Facebook is? How many of you guys know what Share This is? Or have you seen it anyway? Yeah. ClearSpring and Gigya. Those are basically tools that you can use on the internet to share certain stuff. So if you're like ever on, do you still use Flickr? I don't know. If you're on Flickr and you want to share something on Flickr, you share it through the service called Share This. And what it does is it tracks the browsing habits and the information of everybody who clicks on that picture through Share This. And they just harbor the data. And again, Facebook is on there because they have all your personal information as well. Those are just a few companies, but the sharing data / social tools are the social media that you use that harbors your data, and then in turn sells it to the suppliers, who give it to the DMPs and data aggregators, and then just kind of dump it into the advertising system so that you get the best ads on your computer. How many of you guys have ever gone shopping online and then on Facebook you like see an ad for that exact thing that you were looking for, and it's like, hey, remember this? Yeah. I was buying, it was around Christmas time, I was buying a watch for my mom off of Nordstrom. It was like a Michael Kors watch, and I looked at it and I clicked on it, and I was like, I don't know. And I bookmarked it, and then I left. And then I went on Facebook not 2 hours later, and there was an ad for the exact watch from the exact website and the exact same color that I was looking at, and it was like, hey, don't miss out on this. And I was just like, this is absolutely disgusting. Okay, and then there's a bunch of outside actors that go into the process. A little less important. You have ad servers and analytics. Not super relevant, but it's on there. Yes?
Is this the same process for but is it only for online? Is this the same for newspapers or TV?
That's a great question. This is specifically the landscape for technological advertising. It's probably very similar, and I think where it would probably change is it would probably change in the creative optimization process, and then it would also probably change whenever you get to the blue column. And then also the ad ops / infrastructure deals with the medium of what it's going to be used in.
Was the question about newspapers in particular, or about what?
Yeah, I mean newspapers or television.
Okay.
Television is very similar to this.
Yeah, newspapers is a little bit different. It's targeted towards demographics in a geographical area, or subscribers, not necessarily towards you specifically. So, like where I live, we get lots of like Nordstrom's ads, lots of Dillard's ads, because the neighborhood I live in shops at Nordstrom a lot.
Right.
But it's more of a broad scope.
Right. It deals with the vertical and the targeted, not necessarily the target audience, but it deals more with the vertical.
But it's not based off of like information. It's more of like.
Right, it's demographics.
Demographics, yeah.
Which is what the vertical is. And then it's also very performance-based because, that's traditional advertising. Traditional advertising is performance-based.
Yeah,
so how many of you understand this, like what I just talked about? How many of you are totally lost? And you're allowed to be. Don't lie to me. Okay. How many of you don't care? Awesome. Great. Why should you care about this stuff? Somebody who does care, explain why you care. Yeah.
Because the government gets all of the information that they have from these companies.
Okay, that's a good reason. What's another reason why you should care about this? Solomon.
Because everyone's a consumer of this.
Yeah. So you're a consumer, and so you always hear the phrase "being an informed consumer," whatever. But what does that actually mean? It doesn't really mean having a ton of responsibility, and I don't even believe it means like knowing everything. I think the informed consumer thing is kind of a farce. But for the most part, this is important because it's important to understand just how many channels your data goes through. Your data starts all the way up here, and it literally goes through every single one of those boxes just to get you an advertisement on Facebook. So what do you think the channels it goes through whenever the government wants to get your information? It's going to be a lot more than this, and it's going to be a lot more words than somebody who's an analyst at Omnicorp Group who works at an ad agency.
Do they keep all of your information on file as it goes through those channels?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they harbor it like crazy. This is super interesting. These are controlled by 6 companies. This whole process is controlled by 6 companies. Every company you see on that flowchart is controlled by one of those 6. GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, or CBS. That's kind of mind-blowing, right? Because this is a couple hundred different companies that are on that flowchart, and that's not even all of them. So now I'm going to show you a really cool infographic. And I'm just about done, and then I'm going to hand you to Thaddeus. Okay, the media consolidation, the illusion of choice. The media has never been more consolidated. 6 media giants now own and control a staggering 90% of what we read, watch, or listen to. In 83, 90% of American media was owned by 50 companies. And in 2011, that same 90% is controlled by 6. These are referred to as the Big 6. So you can look at that for a second. A lot of people don't know that Disney owns ABC, ESPN, Pixar, Marvel. Yeah, Disney owns Marvel.
And now they own LucasArts too.
Yeah, they own LucasArts now as well.
Who owns Disney?
Disney, nobody owns Disney.
No,
Disney is itself.
Does
like
Disney
it's-
sell stock?
Yeah.
Do they? Okay.
My sister's invested in it.
They should.
Yeah.
So they're publicly owned then. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean publicly owned, but for the most part, they're not really, you know. Again, these are all publicly traded companies. So, in a sense, they are owned by the public, but
So which is the most powerful of the 6?
I would
Disney?
argue Viacom or Disney, because they control the youth. That sounds like a joke, but I promise you it's not. 232 media executives control the information diet of 277 million Americans. That's one media executive to 850,000 subscribers. That's a lot of people. So one media exec per, how many people is 850,000? I'm trying to compare something.
The size of San Francisco?
Really?
Wait,
That's right there.
Oh, great. I didn't even give it all. The audience, the size of San Francisco. Sweet. The 2010 revenue for the Big 6 was $275.9 billion. That's $36 billion more than Finland's GDP. Like an entire country's GDP is like a fraction of that.
And
So
not
that-
like tiny country. Like we're
like
talking about
Finland. Like Finland's
Finland.
and they're a pretty good country. Like they're not like struggling or anything. And it's 5 times the government bailout of GM, which was bananas, a lot of money. They control 70% of your cable. How many of you guys have watched 30 Rock? Okay, how many of you guys understand like the dynamic of 30 Rock is super meta, so they're like referring to themselves a lot and like talking about the companies. It's an NBC show, but it took me a bit to realize that like GE owns NBC, and that's why there's so much of like that plot element in it. I don't know, that's super irrelevant because 90% of you don't watch 30 Rock, but whatever.
It's an awesome show. You guys should watch it.
Who remembers Comcast and NBC merging together recently? Anybody hear about that? No? Okay, Comcast and NBC merged. Who knows what Comcast is? Yes? No? Maybe? Cable provider? Yeah, NBC basically bought out Comcast, which is a subsidiary of GE, right here. And when they merged, GE got control of 1 out of every 5 hours of television and a monopoly of 11 United States markets. Basically, because New York and Chicago, 2 examples, are completely solely markets where NBC and Comcast are used, or Comcast is exclusive in those markets. Your news habits, 178 million unique users read Time Warner News every month. That's 2 times Dig, Tumblr, and Reddit combined, and almost 3 times as much as Google News. 3 times as much as Google News read Time Warner. This is an interesting visual. Wall Street Journal is the #1 newspaper in the country. All the back. Love that publication. News Corp owns all of those. It's bananas. In 2010, they avoided $875 million in U.S. taxes. They didn't pay $875 million in U.S. taxes. They avoided that, which could double FEMA's budget or fund NPR for 40 years.
You say that like it's a bad thing,
If
than
it's a
avoiding
FEMA,
taxes.
If you're a monopoly, taxes are in place for that. Like, I don't know. We can talk about that later if you'd like, but I have a couple choice words for you on that one. In 1995, the FCC forbade companies to own over 40 stations, but Clear Channel owns 1,200 radio stations. How many of you guys listen to like a top 40 music station? Occasionally, okay. That is owned by Clear Channel. Everything is run through Clear Channel on that. What is ND?
North Dakota.
North Dakota. Duh. I was born there, actually. They own every station in Monroe, North Dakota. Everywhere else in the United States, 80% of stations playlist match. Mrs. Robinson has aired 6 million times. It's 32 years of back-to-back non-stop play. Still listening to Mrs. Robinson 32 years later. That song sucks, by the way. Who knows what station's playlist match means? You know that? Do you know how you're like, why is the same song on every single radio station?
Yes.
Yeah, that's that. You can thank record labels for that one. The Big Six's box office sales hit $7 billion in 2010. That's 2 times the box office sales of the next 140 studios. AOL spent $124 billion to buy Time Warner in 2001. That's 6 times what Congress funded to rebuild Iraq. AOL bought the company. Like they could afford to buy a company for 6 times the reconstruction of Iraq. And either that means that the government did a horrible job rebuilding Iraq.
I think it means the government
It's
did a
both.
horrible job.
Probably both.
It's both.
Nailed by the FCC deregulation and decade-long orgy of mergers and acquisitions, these 6 giants dominate our media landscape until regulations return or they buy each other out of existence. They will continue to control 90% of everything Americans see, hear, and consider important. And brought to you by Google. So, super interesting. Again, a lot of that doesn't seem super relevant, or maybe it does. I don't know what you're thinking. But I think it's absolutely fascinating. And basically what it is all that 30, 45 minutes that we just went through, is to show you where your information is, where it goes, who controls it, and the fact of the matter that the government has access to all of it. That is what you said. What is it? Thank you. Yeah.